team in the Lakeview Bulldogs that are another NEA team with a new coach in Sam Bellino trying to reinstill culture into this program.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at Lakeview, I mean, it was one of those seasons too, where you felt like COVID hit Lakeview a little bit harder, and they struggled a little bit, 1-7 last year. But I mean, this is part of what makes this year so optimistic, because this is the time for them to take that jump. And looking at Lakeview, pulling up their roster that I have here, and some of the players that they lost. Really, only one significant guy that was lost was Kyle Roberts, who was on their offensive line. You got a hole there, but Lakeview also is one of those schools that there's a lot of bigger offensive linemen that come out of the Lakeview, so they'll be able to replace that, you'd think, with some size. But they got a senior in Nate Fox, a defensive back this year that was second team NE8 last year as a junior. And I tell you what, he's a pretty talented kid too. And being senior year this year, he's fighting for that first team honors, and he might just get it with Lakeview this year, because Lakeview is a team everyone I think is counting out in that NE8, but I think they're a team that can surprise a lot of opponents.
Fox is a straight up ball hog. I mean, on the defense. I mean, it seems like he's always where the ball ends up in the air. Even if he's on the other side of the field, you'll see him come out of the frame, and all of a sudden, he's there for the pass breakup or whatever. He's just one of those safeties, and we there's a lot of them in football, whether it be college or professional, that just has a knack for getting in on plays. And you're going to be calling his name a lot if you're calling Lakeview games for YSN.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, looking at Lakeview's schedule this year, as we pull it up here. Again, the 3 games that are going to be non-conference to start. They start out August 20th at LeBray, August 27th at Garrettsville Garfield, and then September 3rd versus Liberty at home. So we'll just stop there talk real quick on their non-conference game.
They're not shying away.
Yeah, August 20th at LeBray. That's going to be a tough game to start. We know how far LeBray went and how dynamic they were last year, and you have to start in front of that crowd. That's going to be a tough game to start.
We know that Lakeview's defense struggled last year, and to start off with LeBray, who was one of the more electric offenses that we saw in our area last year, who, by the way, Aiden Stevens coming to town, who is a newly committed Yale player for LeBray. Man, I gotta tell you, that's really that's a tough game to start with in LeBray, and then you go to Garrettsville Garfield, who has been a strong football program for it feels like 20 years. Made a playoff run, ran into Mooney last year in Division 5, but very proud program that's joining the MVAC. And then Liberty. I mean, wow, you're almost exclusively coming into the MVAC with you are, because LeBray, Garfield, and Liberty all MVAC Scarlet Tier teams. So Lakeview making the Scarlet Tier tour to start the season.
Yep, and then going into conference play, they go September 10th versus Niles at home, September 17th at Struthers, or September 17th at Girard, September 24th, Struthers comes home to play Lakeview. October 1st, home versus Hubbard, and then October 8th at Poland, October 15th, home versus South Range, and October 22nd at Jefferson. And I actually circled that October 22nd game at Jefferson, because that game might have playoff implications late in the season, and it might be that one win that team needs. Because like we said too, with the division that they're in, 4-5 wins might do it, so that might be a game where some playoff implications are on the line for both teams.
Imagine if that game where both teams are kind of teetering on like the 14, 15, 16 seed, and like you win that game, you solidify a playoff spot. And if you lose that game, you're kind of hoping you're not out of it, but you're hoping that you can hang on to a playoff spot. Man, that would be a fun week 10 matchup.
And I mean, yeah, their schedule lightens up a little bit. They get to face the lighter part of the NE8 going off of last year, obviously, after the non-conference. But then you got 3 straight tough: Hubbard, Poland, South Range, and then you go to Jefferson. So you might see Lakeview have a windy up and down season where they get some wins early on, they drop a couple, and that might be the game where it's like this is make or break for both teams.
I think it's important that a lot of those tough NE8 games are coming into Cortland. So you got a lot of teams that are gonna, we expect to be really tough for Lakeview, at least having to come into Lakeview and play them at home.
Yeah, and I mean, like we said, I think COVID was one of those things that affected Lakeview a little bit harder than certain other teams too. Maybe not in the community standards like it did Struthers, but at least within the school standards and within the schools, it seemed like the players, their minds were elsewhere, and I mean, understandably so with the COVID going on and everything. I mean, the schedule kind of got thrown on players too last second, and some teams were scrambling trying to just find talent to get them because they didn't know they were even having a football season. So I mean, it was definitely a season where it was easy to be distracted by other things, where I think now Lakeview being totally focused on football, you're going to see them have a drastic improvement from what they were last year.
Lakeview wants to be talked about more. They should be talked about more, and this is one of the years where they have the definite chance to kind of submit their identity in the local media to be talked about more. I mean, you take a couple of these teams down the 88, then all of a sudden we're talking about Lakeview a lot more than we would normally, because the media kind of overlooks Lakeview. They're up in Cortland. They're not someone that a lot of our local teams play a lot. So they definitely are hungry for attention, and that's dangerous when that's a little chip on their shoulder a little bit. And they have the opportunity to get that attention this year by shining a light on the program with a new head coach and also a fairly new energy. They have a social media presence now that Coach Bellino is doing a wonderful job running, and that can kind of boost a young team when they kind of can go and see some of their practice footage and their weightlifting programs and be lifted up on social media a little bit by their coach. You would be surprised how much that can boost a kid's confidence. So I think that's an important factor too. A lot of people might overlook it, but I think a new coach bringing in a new social media platform and giving kids a reason to kind of strive for success, big move by Coach Bellino.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's going to be exciting too. A new coach, new culture, and it seems like it's a culture that really is all in on bringing more kids into the program and getting the kids super involved. So it's going to be exciting to watch what Lakeview has to offer with a new head coaching and new culture. So let's see what they have to offer going forward.
I think that's going to be big for them is how much they can get engagement from pre-high school, junior high, and even their Pee-wee programs, and how much their numbers can grow in the next 2 or 3 years to really solidify that program.
Yeah, and I mean, Bellino taking similar steps to YSN's own Coach Seidel and just trying to get that involvement from the younger, because Coach Seidel, just like Coach Bellino knows, you got to start young to get them up through the high school ranks, and you got to get that interest peaked at a young age to make them really want to get involved into the program.
You know what I really like about Coach Bellino and what I've seen so far from what we hear from him? He's got energy. Like he's legitimately excited about Lakeview football. He's not just taking the job because it's a coaching opportunity. He is legitimately excited and energetic about what he can do for Lakeview's football program. And some guys, they come into a new program and it's like, I'm just here for a coaching job, or I'm just here to fill up some time. I don't, you got to tell that they put on the face and they look excited, but Coach Bellino backs it up with a lot of energy and a lot of excitement for this Lakeview program. That's the first step in building something special, is just being excited about where you're at, being excited about bringing them success, and excited for the future. That's the first step. And I'm very excited to eventually get Coach Bellino on to talk about some of his plans for not just being successful this year, but building a successful program in Cortland.
Absolutely, 100%.